This will be fun. Does anybody know who this man is? Pope Francis, right? We have a few more pictures to show you. This is Pope Francis at his election back in 2013, I believe it was. Who's that guy? The one before him, yes. Anybody remember his name? What's that? This is John Paul was before this guy. This is Pope Benedict XVI. So next one. There's John Paul II. So go to the next slide. What difference do you notice between these three men in these pictures? Yeah, the two on the bottom are a little bit more, more formal. I don't know if formal is the right word there. But yes, that is a great observation. It's how they dress. Pope Francis, who is on the top there, is a little bit less formal than the previous popes. Now, you will see Pope Francis in traditional vestments every so often. In fact, there's a picture of him at his election here when he comes out to bless the crowd that shows him wearing that sash that you see in the other two photos on there. So Pope Francis he'll wear this stuff. He definitely will. But in general, Francis has downplayed some of the lavish nature of previous popes. If you're not aware, he does not live in the papal apartment in the Apostolic Palace in Vatican City. He lives in what's called St. Martha's house, which is a guest house in Vatican City. He's not the same room, but it's the same place he was staying when he was elected pope. This is the house where, if you know anything about how they elect popes, all the cardinals from around the world come together and they hang out for however long and they elect the pope. Well, the St. Martha's house was built specifically to house the cardinals when they come. I think that's an accurate way to say that. So he's actually staying in that place because it's more accessible to people than the papal apartment was. There is an old adage, clothes make the man. Mark Twain added to that idea by saying, clothes make the man, naked people have little or no influence on society. Though I'm not sure how true that statement is anymore, the way things go. What people wear does send a message. For better or worse, it does send a message. Can you imagine a lawyer showing up to court in ripped blue jeans and a t-shirt? It'd be a great episode of Law and Order, wouldn't it? I'd watch that one. But we make judgments about people based on what they wear, positive judgments and negative judgments. And we know that people will make judgments about us based on what we wear as well. And sometimes we specifically wear things in an effort to influence what people think about us. And again, that can be used in a good way or in a bad way. I'm sure some of you notice the way I tend to dress in the pulpit. Usually I wear blue jeans. These are not blue jeans. These are work pants. These are really comfortable, by the way. I like these. But I don't traditionally wear the suit. I look good in a suit, right? Thank you for that affirmation. But I usually don't wear that, and there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I'm a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy. It's just kind of how I am. But I also look at it in a way where if we get somebody coming to this church and the pastor's in a three-piece suit and most people are dressed nicely and the nicest thing they have to wear is kind of a t-shirt and jeans, are they going to feel like they fit in? Are they going to feel welcome? Well, if everybody's wearing something nice and the pastor's up here in jeans and a collared shirt, a little bit dressed down, I think that's a little more welcoming to someone that doesn't have real nice clothes to wear. But I digress. The way the teachers of the law dress is something that Jesus is warning about. Jesus actually warns us about 6 things here in this section. He warns us that the teachers of the law like to walk around in flowing robes. They like to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces. They like to have the most important seats in the synagogues, and they like to have places of honor at banquets. Teachers of the law also devour widows' houses, and for a show make lengthy prayers. So let's start with that first one. They like to walk around in flowing robes. Why would they do that? It's so people notice them. Look at that guy. Look at those beautiful flowing robes he's wearing. That's amazing. And what do we think? He must be someone that is important. Yes. Why else would someone wear robes if they're not important? The warning here isn't so much against wearing nice clothes. There's nothing wrong with that. The warning here is against wearing something nice so that people notice the person wearing them and elevating that person or even worshiping that person in a way that must not be done. What should the teachers of the law be doing? They should be pointing people to who? To God. But if they're wearing the flashy clothes, these flowing robes, the attention is not on God, it's on the person, right? Again, think of Pope Francis. He will wear those traditional vestments on occasion. But he does tend to lean more toward the simpler side of things. The teachers of the law like to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces. Well, first of all, who doesn't like to be greeted with respect? Everyone does, of course. But some take it a little too far at times. Well, I did this, so you need to respect me. I rescued 18 children from a burning school bus years ago. You need to respect me. It's like, well, that's great you did that, and thank you, but you're still kind of a jerk. It doesn't really change the fact. Can I try this? I've got a robe in my office. I think maybe I'll put that on one day. I'm going to go into Target wearing my robe. I'm just going to walk on into Target. Hey guys, I'm a clergy. I'm pretty special. You over there in the cafe, bring me an icy. The large one. Yes, the big one. Blue raspberry, please. Yes. And you, bring me one of those personal pan pizzas that you guys make. Look at me. Respect me. Love me, for I am clergy. Right? Aside from the obvious that if you tried to do something like this, you'd be laughed out of the store and most likely escorted out by security, and rightfully so, what is the really big problem here? If you are a teacher of the law and you do something like this, respect me, love me, are you pointing people to God? No, you're pointing people to self. I'm important. I demand respect. Look at me. Continuing on with that idea, they like to have the most important seats in the synagogue. In the synagogue, much like where our cross is today, there would be an area that would contain the Torah scrolls. This is a very important area in the synagogue. It's the most important place. And in that area, there would be some seats. It would be kind of like if we came up here and we put a couple chairs by the cross, like really nice chairs. I'm talking massaging lazy boy chairs, right? Some really nice ones up here. And then who would we get to sit in them? Well, it would have to be the important people that have done something really special for the church or have given a lot of money to the church. They would get to sit up here. But the problem with that is we're not having them sit there for God's glory. They'd be sitting there for their own glory, for them to be noticed. Look at all those people down there. All those little people down in the pews. I'm so special getting sit up here in my massaging chair under the cross, next to the pulpit, next to the pastor as he preaches. I'm special, I'm important. Then they turn on the massaging thing and can't hear the pastor at that point, right? They like to have these special places. They like to have places of honor at banquets. It's the same thing. Having a place of honor makes people notice the person and not God. Jesus goes on to say, the teachers of the law like to devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. I want to look at the prayer part first. We'll come back to the devouring widows' houses in a moment. For a show, they make lengthy prayers. Of course, Jesus is not condemning prayer here. He's not even condemning lengthy prayer here. He's warning against a lengthy prayer for show. If the prayer, the person saying the prayer, is doing it for show, to whom are they trying to draw attention? Is it to God? No, of course not. It's to the person that is praying. This isn't the only warning that we get about prayer. In Matthew 6, verses 5 through 8, we get this. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Very truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. As I was researching this week, I did see another suggestion about what Jesus means here, and it ties in with what was said just before when he says, they devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. In James' epistle, we read, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So to do the opposite of this would be bad, especially bad, of course. And so one of the suggestions here is that these lengthy prayers that Jesus mentions, that Jesus is condemning, are being requested by the widows and offered up by the teachers of the law for compensation. The widow pays the teacher of the law, then he will pray for her. She pays, he prays. It is to take advantage of the most vulnerable in society. They devour widows' houses. This is a tricky one to understand. The suggestion, again, is that the teachers of the law are taking advantage of the widows instead of caring for them. Perhaps they're getting into an agreement that on the surface it seems like they're helping that widow with whatever she needs and whatever she has, but in reality they're actually tricking her into giving over her possessions to that teacher of the law. Overall, what Jesus is warning is that the teachers of the law are not using their position to point others to God. They're using their status for earthly gain, for personal advantage, and for selfish ambition. But here's the question. Do we have to worry about these actions of the teachers of the law? We aren't teachers of the law, are we? So we should be immune from this, right? Of course not. There's something in Baptist churches, those of you that have been in the Sunday school might remember this from a few weeks ago, called priesthood of who? All believers. The priesthood of all believers. So as Christians, as believers, we have a job to do. And part of that job is to fulfill the Great Commission, which is to make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and, anybody remember the next word? Teaching them to obey everything I have commanded. So we are teachers. So can you imagine for a second, we go out and we start saying, well, I'm a Christian. Remember back to my mythical Target adventure? I wanted my icy and I wanted my personal pan pizza, not to glorify God, but to glorify me, to glorify my stomach. Blue raspberry, by the way, right? That didn't point anyone to God, that pointed everyone to me. So we have to understand that as Christians, if you're telling someone about God, but it's not glorifying God, it's not bringing them to God, it's bringing them closer to you, you're failing just as the teachers of the law failed, as Jesus said. We must consider how we are perceived when we are representing God. And we must be certain that we are bringing the proper message. The second half of our reading today is talking about the offering the widow places in the temple treasury. Now, does this connect with the first half of our reading, or is this just a totally separate story that Jesus throws in here? Maybe Mark was just kind of compiling some things together and thought, well, it sounds good here, it fits, I'll throw it in there. Do you think the two connect? Yes. How do they connect? It's the widow. In the first half of our reading today, Jesus mentions the widow. They devour widows' houses. They take advantage of widows. And in the second half of our reading, it's a widow who is placing this offering in the temple treasury. So as a reminder for us, Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came in and put 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." To better understand here what the widow put in, let's modernize the numbers a little bit. Here in Mark, our translation says, worth a few cents. What the coins were that she gave, each coin was worth about 1/64th of a denarius. Everybody knows exactly what that means. Well, 1 denarius is the equivalent of about 1 day's work at the time. So 1/64th of a day is about 7.5 minutes if you're working full time. So when she put these 2 coins in, today's equivalent would be about 15 minutes of work if you're working full time, okay? So let's figure this out. Minimum wage in the United States is $7.25. If you're only making minimum wage, 15 minutes of work is $1.80. Most places around here, you drive around, they're hiring $15, $16 an hour. Well, if you're making $15 an hour, 15 minutes of work is $3.75. So what this woman put into the treasury, if we were to modernize it today, is the equivalent of not even $5. What does that get you? Maybe 1 large plain coffee over at Caribou? Maybe? You're not getting any fancy coffee for $5. That's for sure. For us, $5 is nothing. You're going to go out to lunch today. Some of you are going to go out to lunch today and you're going to spend 2, 3, 4 times that on your lunch. You can barely go to McDonald's and get a meal for $5, unless you got a really good coupon. When we look at it objectively, when we compare dollar to dollar, what she put in was almost meaningless, almost worthless. How much do you think that temple complex really needed to function? How much money do you think it needed to function? $2 wouldn't do much of anything. I didn't have the chance to actually look this up, so I'm asking this question. Maybe some of you know. Does anybody know what the typical utility bill is for our church building in January, February? Any ideas? It's in the many hundreds of dollars, I know that. So should we just say $500 for a month? Does that sound right? We'll say $500 for the month. So somebody that puts $2 in, if I throw $2 into the plate, that's going to put a minor dent into our electric bill. I was thinking about this last night, and my electric bill at home for my apartment in January, February, because I have electric heat, and so it goes up quite a bit, about $100 to $120 a month. So $2 would get me a half a day of heat in my apartment, something like that. Just to kind of put this all in perspective. So the person that can give $300, $400, $500 a month, it impacts those bills a lot. It's awesome. It's needed. But the person that gives $2, when $2 is all they have to give, when that's it, that's everything they have, they're truly giving far more to the work of God. Just imagine for a moment if you truly gave everything. If you had no food in your pantry at home, if you had nothing in the fridge, you had no car in the garage, you had one pair of shoes and a couple sets of clothes, and the only thing you had was $2 in your pocket, and you chose to give that to God. That's what this widow did. As Jesus says, she, out of her poverty, put in everything. Did she know where her next meal was going to come from? Could she have used that for of course she could have. Does she know? We don't know the whole story. But there's certainly a suggestion that she didn't know what was going to happen later that day or the next day or the day after, where she was going to stay, what she was going to eat. She gave that to God faithfully. Now, don't think that this lesson is merely financial. What's something else that we can give to God? Our time, absolutely. We can give God our time. But there just aren't enough hours in the day. We love to say that, don't we? But is that true? Are there really not enough hours in the day? Did God not make the day long enough for us? Now, it's true, we're not good to anybody if we completely burn ourselves out. I'll be the first one to say that. Don't go crazy. But what if we prioritized our time a little better? What if instead of saying, Sunday morning is the only time I have to catch up on sleep? What if instead we said, I'll take a nap Sunday afternoon. I'll go to bed early Saturday night. It's easier said than done, right? I get it. But what if we prioritized our time? What if we prioritized our God time? If it's important to us, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work, right? We have this contrast in our two halves of reading today. Over here we have the teachers of the law who are taking advantage of their position. They're exploiting God, and they're exploiting people's goodness and people's desire to do right for God, and they're doing that, of course, for their own personal benefit. They expect to be revered themselves instead of pointing people to the Lord. They don't give, they take. Bring me an icy. Put the little straw in there with a scoop on the end so it's the right icy straw. And not sure why ices are on my mind today, but that's what they're asking. They're using their position for their own benefit rather than what the position is supposed to be for, which is to point people to God. But the widow, this woman who had nothing to give, absolutely nothing to give, she still gave everything to God. And she showed her faithfulness in that incredible act. Now, of course, the question is, was the woman faithful because of her act, or did she perform the act because she was faithful? Amen.